Good morning. And for all who celebrate, Happy Mother's Day. It's good to have you with us, and whatever you are celebrating today, we are glad to have you with us. I'm Reverend Leslie Takahashi. My pronouns are she and her, and it's my great privilege to serve as one of the ministers of this amazing congregation. We're so glad that you're here today and that we can worship together on this morning. For those of you who are visiting us, we are glad to have you join us and hope you'll also join us afterward just to say hello and learn a little bit more about who we are and what we care about. You can also fill out a visitor's card on at the table at the front if you haven't already done so. And if you're online and visiting us, welcome. We're really glad you're here. And we also invite you to fill out a virtual visitor card. Next month, we'll have a Connecting You and MDU-UC for those of you who are new and want to learn more about who we are and what we do together. And on the first of the month, we have an opportunity for those who are interested in membership to go ahead and sign our book and make those commitments. We always have a lot going on here. And this week, I want to call to your attention that we have our Justice Night on Tuesday. There's a lot going on in the world, and I know many of us want to be involved, and I want to take a moment and give a shout out. We have the return of our social justice table today, so hooray, what a good thing to do. We're really glad for that. We also next Saturday have our Breath and Spirit Retreat, which is a great chance to catch your breath if this time of all the changes and reentry is feeling a little overwhelming for you. Feel free to come and rest with us in that beautiful space as well. You can check out everything else that's happening on our calendar. You can contact me or our intern minister, Michael Macias, who is off. They are celebrating this week their birthday, so they're off this week. But if you're in need of a listening ear or financial support, please do ask, because asking is a gift you give to our community, and welcome to this beloved community.
Good morning. My name is Steve Hirsch, and I have the privilege of serving as a member on your church board. And I use the pronouns he, him, and his. And I also want to wish all the mothers out there a happy Mother's Day, especially my amazing wife, who also happens to be an amazing mother, Mariana. Let's start by reading our church mission together. We are a welcoming faith community. That's what Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is. And we begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. We welcome you to today's service. We're so glad you're with us, and we hope all of you are keeping safe. We are still in the midst of our annual pledge drive, and I want to start by thanking all members and friends who've already made a pledge. But for those who have yet to do so, it's not too late. I believe that we will have the pledge box out on a table after the church service. We will. Excellent. So if you're able to and you haven't yet made your pledge, you can do so today, and you can continue to do so online for those who are joining us virtually by going to our church website, www.mduc.org, and clicking on the Give Now button. Please also join us for forums on May 15th and May 22nd, where we'll talk more about the budget that we will bring forward for member approval at our annual congregational meeting on June 5th. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your generosity. It's good to be together.
So before we do our greeting, I want to mention that we are thinking a lot about families around our world this week, and we have the opportunity to, through one of our members, Diana Rivutsky, support a Ukrainian family that has been come into this area. So if you're interested in being part of that support, please go ahead and make a donation when we take our collection today. And to do so, just put Ukrainian family in your memo line, or you can make it online at the Our Give tab today as well. So please, let's extend our generosity as we think about families today. We're going to greet one another, and we're going to begin by turning to the camera, everyone who's in the sanctuary, and waving at the people who are online. We're so glad you're with us today. Yay. And now that you're warmed up, go greet each other.
Good morning. I have a quote. Can you hear me? I have a quote from Julia Ward Howe, our Unitarian ancestor, the originator of Mother's Day, which was originally a Mother's Day of peace. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of Women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, and a great and general interest of peace. And on a personal note, as we bring in the light of this candle, my mother is of the physical past. In the present, her voice remains inside often, guiding, nurturing, questioning, exploring, and I believe somehow she continues to give me thoughts and ideas for the future. Through thick and thin, it is an honor to be a mother, and may we welcome in the light of peace and those whom you have nurtured and who have nurtured you.
Yes. Okay, I would like to invite all of the kids to come up front for a story, and just be careful of these microphones, okay? All right, today's story is called This is the Rope. This is the rope my grandmother found beneath an old tree a long time ago, back home in South Carolina. This is the rope my grandmother skipped under the shade of a sweet-smelling pine. This is the rope my grandfather used to tie the few things they owned to the top of the car that drove my grandmother, who was a mother now, from South Carolina all the way to a place called New York City. This is the rope my grandmother held tight as my grandfather drove real slow past the people and big city buildings that seemed to go on and on and on and on. This is the rope that my grandmother used to dry the sweet-smelling flowers she grew in small window boxes, reminding her of the flowers back home, where the land, she said, went on and on and on. This is the rope my grandfather strung so that my mama's diapers could blow dry in the hot city breeze. And this is the rope my mama tied around a small ducky's neck, then pulled it along singing, quack, 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 quack. This is the rope my mama held out to the girls on the block, her new Brooklyn block, a home of their own that they finally owned. Mama asked shyly, "Anybody want to play?" This is the rope my mama first tripped on as she sang with her friends. Miss Lucy had a baby, she named him Tiny Tim. This is the rope Mama's brothers took from her room for some crazy game that the little boys play. This is the rope my mama found again 10 years later when my grandfather said, "We need a bit of rope to tie these things down inside this here car, like that rope we used to have from back home." Then he drove with my mama off to a college far away from the city, while up at the window, my grandmother waved. This is the rope my mama placed on the piano around the family photos, and me, just a baby, and then a bit bigger, already reaching for it. This is the rope my daddy used when he showed me the way to tie a sailor's knot. 2 times around and pull it real tight. You want whatever you make or you do in your life. My daddy said, to the last. This is the rope my mama turned as she waved to my daddy and taught me to sing the Miss Lucy song out on our sidewalk right here in Brooklyn just last Friday night. This is the rope that held up the sign saying, "We are all family," at our picnic reunion in the big park up the street from our house. This is the rope, threadbare and graying, that I traded with Grandma for a brand new one. Then I jumped a new rope. My name is Beatrice. I come from Brooklyn. As my family smiled proudly and the sun began setting, as Grandma held on to her rope from back home, and her long ago memory of sweet-smelling pine. The end. And now I'd like to invite you all to join Mark in singing our children to their activities.
We gather today with the words of our community. A couple weeks ago, I began to ask people to share what gifts they have received from other generations, and we got some wonderful replies. Here are some.
Mary Allen. My dad modeled how to be there for all people of different cultures, lifestyles, and beliefs. This was done with a societal community that was pretty conservative. I am forever grateful for having firsthand experience regarding how this can be done.
Ann Piper. When the pandemic started 2 years ago, my granddaughter Nina, a high school senior at the time, was concerned about my well-being because we were sheltering in place. She suggested and began to have a 1-hour Zoom call with me every week. And we continue to have a 1-hour Zoom call every week for the past 2 years. Nina also taught me how to set up a Zoom call, and she wrote down all the instructions. I feel so blessed to have this one-on-one time with my granddaughter.
Joe Schallenberg. The gift that most comes to mind are our 6 grandchildren from our 3 sons and daughter-in-laws. Our grandchildren are the most giving people I have ever had in my life. They bring so much joy in their individual ways. It is such a wonderful experience to share their growth and new adventures.
And now, we're going to listen to some other voices that offered their thoughts about gifts across the generations. And as you do, I invite you to close your eyes and picture in your mind's eye your favorite moments when people at different stages in life interact.
Hi, Leslie. It's Susie Simons calling. And I do have a sweet story. My mother was diagnosed with glioblastoma, and she knew that she had about 4 weeks of clarity before she would probably slip into a coma. And so my daughter and I sat with her. My mom was 86 at the time. And we said, Gigi, Mom, what is it that you want us to carry on when you're gone? And she said, family, hospitality, and, the education of women. And that is what I take as an important message and a trajectory from my mom.
Hello, Reverend Leslie. It's Errol Reyes. My family, and maybe you can speak about Robin's family. Neither family is really, we're not really materialistic, but the more I thought of what is something tangible per se that we pass on to one another, but what I can think of is the gift of time. We love to gather around the dining table, both families side by side, different times. But one thing that we would do is, tell stories and hang out, chit chat. We do like to play board games, or even dominoes, and crack up jokes. Talk about work, talk about our day-to-day, how things are. And by doing that, it is actually, priceless.
Hi, Leslie. It's Sally. Wisdom. I barely knew my grandmothers. My daughter didn't want me telling her anything. However, with my granddaughters, it is a different story. They love small doses of wisdom via text from Yaya. The most recent, centered around Roe v. Wade, encouraged them to carry on the fight for women's rights that we, parentheses, our elder generation, began in our young adult lives.
Hi, this is Mary Helen Binger. I wanted to share with you the joy that I've had being part of my daughter's growing family. I retired and moved to California to be supportive of my daughter when she had her first child. I was delighted at her gentle nudges that I move out here. And so I did that, almost to my surprise. I thought I would be a workaholic until I was in my 70s, but I retired when I was just over 60. Moved out here, and that was about 15 years ago. And I have just had so many gifts watching my daughter grow as a mother, watching my grandchildren grow and change year after year. I feel like this is a rare opportunity in our age-segregated culture, and one that I'm so grateful for. I get gifts from my grandchildren as they share with me the things they've valued about our time together over the years. Things that have surprised me, like the importance of sewing together, making pajamas, and learning to use my sewing machine, doing sleepovers where we sleep on my living room floor and watch movies and then have ice cream together. And when I had the dogs, then we'd go for early morning walks in our pajamas. So just many things that I have loved about being part of this growing family and watching them all grow. I continue to think about this multi-generational nature of our family as I pass along to my daughter some of the things that my mother left for me. Now, my daughter doesn't want all of those things, but some of them she does. And it has reawakened my appreciation for my own mother.
Finally, from our board president, Linda Russell, unwavering faith. Come, let us worship together.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing our opening song. Where do we come from? We'll sing each part. This is a 4-part partner song. We'll sing each part twice. And then I'll invite you to pick a part, any part, but don't sing the same part as your neighbor, and see how they go together. Here's the first one. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Part 4. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Now pick a part, any part, go. Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we?
Now's the time in our service where we come together to hold those things that are too large or too small for any one of us to hold alone. It's our joys and sorrows, and today I'm asking Reverend Leslie to light a candle on both of our behalves, a candle that holds all those concerned about body autonomy and the right for all of us to make our own informed health choices independent of government involvement. May this candle also remind us that these are indeed days of deep interconnectedness. None of us are free until all of us are. To further honor our religious heritage's insistence on this deep interconnectedness, we both also want to light a candle of commemoration of the death of 1 million U.S. citizens from the viral infection that still plagues our world. May this community continue to care for all who have contracted this terrible disease, and may we continue to protect one another. Elizabeth, Steve, and Nick Deach are lighting a candle today. It is with great joy that we can share that that Nigel is graduating from Acalanes High School and has accepted, did I misspell? Okay, sorry. And has accepted admission to Purdue University in the fall. So that's a good one. With mispronunciations and everything, it's still a glorious joy. And now I'll ask for 2 final candles to be lit, the first representing all of the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts, and the second to remind us that there's still love and light in this imperfect but healing world.
We want to invite you to sing our meditation song, Somos El Niño. The words are on the screen, and we'll be singing in Spanish. And when we do this, I want to invite you to not worry too much about it being perfect. We will stumble over the words, those of us who don't know the language that well, and that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to be imperfect. Somos el niño, somos la madre, somos el pecho que nutre y la fortalece. Somos el rayo. Enlaza con este rosal. Somos la fuerza de manos que trascenden. Somos en tu alma las ansias de amor. Somos del viento la voz del eterno renacer. Somos pasado y porvenir, respirando en ti. Somos tu templo. Somos tu Somos la luz que te guía. Somos la fuerza de somos en todas las ansias de amor. Somos del viento, la voz del eterno renacer. Somos pasado y por venir respirando en ti. Somos bellota que se abre luego. Que dura y que ha de corazón somos, que late y se abre. Somos aquel que perdona, que sabe cambiar. Sonos al fuerza de manos que te sostienen. Somos en todo ansias de amor. Somos del viento, la voz del eterno renacer. Somos pasado por venir respirando en ti. Thank you.
I invite you to join with me today in the spirit of our ancestor, Unitarian Julia Ward Howe, who conceived of this Mother's Day of peace, knowing that the motivation of all parents is always the well-being of their children. I invite you to join me in the opening of your hearts. That is prayer and meditation. The only prayer I can offer today is for the children of the mothers who are not able to parent, for the children whose parents could not protect them from war, the children who wonder about the next meal instead of wondering at the stars, the children who lost parents to the pandemic some said was not real, the children who worry about our planet and whether its people can get along. The only prayer I offer today is for the children who shower one another in all kinds of rainbows, the children who still seek love despite a world of strife, the children who mind the wisdom all around them, the children who still seek that other way that is possibility, the children who dream of peace. The only prayer I can offer today is for the children. Amen. And may we make their dreams a reality.
Hello. My name is Andrew Oswald. I serve on your board of trustees. My pronouns are he and him. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who are here in person and online. Some people have complex feelings on Mother's Day, so I want to offer a quote that also honors our chosen families. This is from Mother Teresa. If you want to bring happiness to the whole world, go home and love your family. The problem with our world is that we draw the circle of family too small. There is a light in this world, a healing spirit more powerful than any darkness that we encounter. It's not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. Given that we are approaching the end of our pledge drive, I would also like to say it's not how much we give, how much love we put in the giving. The easiest way to give is by going to mduuc.org/give in your web browser, or, for those of you in person, giving directly to the ushers as they come around. All giving is welcome, no matter how large or small. Thank you. And now let us dedicate our offering with the words on the screen. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
So we are going to invite you to join us in a responsive reading. Rodney's going to read some things, I'm going to read some things, and when it's your turn to read some things, we're going to point to the screen. You have traveled where I am traveling.
I would like to know what brings you the most joy.
We do share this ever-turning, heating planet.
Across experience,
Across the changes we all face, the turbulence, the peaceful parts.
you will travel where I am traveling.
No age travels the same path.
Nor explores the same world.
Let's connect. Thank you. Can we just take a moment and be grateful for all the wisdom and gifts we've already received in this service? Just so wonderful. Let's just thank you. And the choir, having the choir back. Y'all, I'm going to be celebrating that for 2 full years, having the choir back. So as we all know, generational jokes abound. Here's one. A mother texts. This is in honor of Mother's Day. A mother texts, "Son, what do IDKLY and TTYL mean?" And he texts us back, "I don't know, love ya, talk to you later." Just saying. You know, as a child, I remember the gap between me and my grandparent seemed huge. I only had one that I knew. It was my grandfather. 2 had died before I was born, and my relationship with my Japanese-American grandmother was caught up in my parents' divorce. My grandfather, though, was born in 1898. He lived to be 102, which was not a thing in his day, I need to say. Both of my parents were children of older parents, which was also very rare in those times. And so we had an extra generational gap between me and my only grandparent. My grandfather remembered a day before automobiles and planes, which always seemed astounding to me. And I thought the difference between his lifetime and my lifetime was probably going to be the biggest there ever was in terms of change. Probably not. The generational divide, though, has been widening for many reasons over the last decade, and especially in the pandemic. And just a few weeks ago, the story broke that millennials now outnumber baby boomers in our nation, and that for a limited time, we will have boomers, Gen X, Gen Ys, millennials, and what's emerging as Gen Z all in the same workforce, and that is not supposed to be pretty. Sometimes the gaps between generations can seem unbridgeable. A recent article concluded that COVID-19 has widened the generational divide between older adults and younger people because the pandemic has reinforced the misperception that older adults are weak and need to be protected, and social distancing has separated many generations and families. Okay, that's a little pessimistic. Let's juxtapose that truth with another one and some other opinions. You've heard some of them in our call to worship. I do want to note, though, that those who responded to our weeks of inquiry, almost none of them were from the millennial. None of them, in fact, were from the millennial or other generations. So it's important to note that. So let's juxtapose, though, some other things, like Jerry Duffy, who's a professor at King's College in London, who says that despite the myths such as the fact that baby boomers have ruined parenting forever, or that millennials have destroyed the napkin industry. You got to think about that. I actually had to think about that. That's interesting. Things aren't as bad as they seem. The author of a rather massive new book called Generations has a bottom line, which is this. He says, generational thinking is a really useful idea that has been corrupted by being misapplied. Colby Takada, a Japanese American from the millennial generation, who is at 25, took over a large senior living residence in Hawaii. And he said he was able to do that in part because he was an Encore Fellow. He was in a program that intentionally brings leaders of different generations together so that they can share their wisdom. So that is some of the better news. Generational relations are all a swirl in these times, and it has long been the case that Black, Indigenous, Asian, Latinx, Arab, and other communities tend to honor multi-generational relationships in a little bit more active way. The dominant culture has tended to emphasize generational difference, and it's actually become a really important part of business models and marketing, which has reinforced that. With the growth of understanding of the rainbow of sexual orientations and gender identities has come the idea that Andrew mentioned, that of chosen family, necessitated by the rejection of truths by those biologically related and the pain related to that. And to all of us as people who care about the human family, I think this issue of generations and how we reach out across them is really worth considering a bit more. Other changes I've been reminded of this spring have come about by the number of lives that we've celebrated, and we've had many, and we'll still have many celebrations of life this spring. The majority of the people that we've marked this year lived up into their late 80s, and that is now more common, as it is now also more common for people to do what my grandfather did and go up to the century mark or beyond. People also remain children actively, with moms and dads sometimes into their 80s, and that's a really different situation than we tend to think about. Duffy says, you can only understand the future if you understand what is generational. He says that what's significant about generational difference are the events that we experience at any one time, such as period events, which are economic prosperity in certain times, or economic downfall, or social change, or a pandemic, which we've shared. There are also generational events that are life cycle events. Those are the natural effects of aging, and he points out that while we have generational differences, one thing that's different about generational differences is that eventually, if all goes well, we all kind of get to experience all the different stops along the way. So it changes. He also says there are cohort effects, the specific experiences of a generation, such as those who are now living in Afghanistan or Ukraine will forever hold as a mark among them. Duffy says we overestimate what we worry about, and that is magnified by the increasingly sensationalized nature of news, which does nothing for intergenerational relationships or stereotypes. He observes that you would rarely see this headline: non-pregnant teenager just getting on with stuff. Hardly ever happens. Misperceptions are sometimes useful indicators, though, about where we're really worried together. And myth-busting that just tries to clear up facts is ignoring the emotional concerns that different generations have in their relationships with one another and that can help them move closer. Another effect, he says, is what he calls rosy retrospection, the idea that it was always better back in the day, right? Better back in the day, and the longer you go, the more of those days are behind you, and the fewer that are before you, and so it becomes easier to be caught in rosy retrospection, as he says. He says an example of that is that the murder rate is actually down in this nation and has been for a long time, and in many other countries in Europe, and yet most think it is higher. He again reminds us of one of the principles of our media, which is if it bleeds, it leads. And this keeps reinforcing those dividing generalizations. Humor, in addition to myths, are another place that often reveals where the fissions are. So there's a website called, I'm sorry about this in the spirit of Mother's Day, but it is called scarymommy.com. And it has some boomer and millennial jokes. You can go and read the rest of them if you like this selection. you can listen carefully and see if you can tell which are which. Number 1, I'm getting so sick of millennials and their attitudes, always walking around like they rent the place. If I had $1 for every time a boomer insulted me, I could afford a house in the economy they ruined. What did the millennial say to the boomer upset about being called boomer? The same thing boomers said to them growing up. They're just words. They can't hurt you. And baby boomers, the ones outspending their children's inheritance. So we need, as we can tell, if the humor is assigned, to be actively working across generational lines. And we need places where we can practice that, leaving our stereotypes at the door. While millennials and Gen Zers are rightfully angry, for example, at the state of our climate or our economy and our inequality in our society, which persists, in truth, so are many in generations X, Y, and boomers. And as to the culture wars that we hear so much about, it's interesting to realize that this is a term that was originally coined by the far political right, the culture wars, and yet it has been particularly taken on by the majority of baby boomers now. A more diversified world is just a reality. Gen Zers, it was just recently announced, are by far the most diverse generation in this nation since colonization. So the wisdom of those indigenous to this nation might be worth looking at here. The idea of considering 7 generations is almost a cliche when one refers to indigenous context. And yet it has also been mythologized. As Lakota elder and author of God is Red, Vine Deloria says, he speaks of the 7 generations in very practical terms. In his cantankerous way, he would express extreme annoyance at the romanticism of this concept of 7 generations. He would say, as it was explained to him in his culture, the generations we have sworn to protect and revere are the 7 that we're most immediately connected to. It doesn't have to be that theoretical, he says. Stop worrying 7 back or 7 up. Just worry about your kids and your grandkids, your parents and your grandparents, and how to be in relationship with them. Duffy also notes that we always think the youngest generation is the worst ever, the weirdest ever, and that started with Socrates, who thought that the younger people were rude and unpleasant. Duffy says that we need to come to understand that tension between generations is not actually bad. It's a sign that there's foment and change, and that which does not change irresistibly dies, and so change is always good societally. Yet with the isolating effects of an age-segmented social media and fewer opportunities to be together with people of different generations, especially if we're not related, we may be in a particular time when paying attention to our generations makes sense. Both sides benefit, and we all need to engage in longer-term thinking. It's not about how old versus young, Duffy says. It's about how we all are willing to look at the future. Only 30% of U.S. citizens think things will be better for their children, and that's a higher rate than Great Britain or any of the European countries. And the evidence says that it might be true. The ability to own a home in this country has decreased in every generation since the first half of the baby boom. Many believe that this gap feels worse because of one of those period effects. We hear more from extreme points of view, and yet that is in tension with the fact that inequity is increasingly generational and intergenerational. A lot of wealth concentrated in a subset of older groups means that there is a decline of public programs, and private wealth has become more important to ensure that people have basic needs like housing and job security. Generational thinking is an incredibly powerful ideal that has been corrupted, as he said, by stereotypes like considering that the boomers are materialistic or narcissistical, or that millennials are all snowflakes. So challenging the myths by looking at real experience and by using places like this congregation, which does have a multi-generational community, is really an important thing to do. We need to listen to the truths, especially from some of our younger generations who were in the pandemic, the first to be let go from their jobs, though the older workers are having the hardest time getting back in because of the ways that technology has become more central. We've got an incredible amount of agency, Duffy says, to change things for the good or the bad, and having a long-term generational view gives us the idea that we can achieve change. And here, as a multi-generational community, as we were gifted to be reminded of last week by our youth service, which if you haven't seen, you should check out on our YouTube channel, The Heart of Which, we can continue to bridge this really important area. As people who care about one another, who care about our planet, who care about the world's children, we have a choice now. We can allow the bridging, the gap to continue to widen as it has been over these last years, or we can do what we decide we can to help weave a net over that. We can be grateful for los hermanos, those that have come before us. We can know that love has broken down some walls and can continue to do if we're patient and willing to listen. We can build a new way. We can talk and share, reach out, collaborate, and question. We can draw the circle wide. And let's do that in the spirit of this day.
So with this, we want to invite you all to rise and bow to your spirit. Let's join in singing our closing song, Draw the Circle Wide. I'm going to ask the choir if you would like to come up and help lead this song. Draw the circle. Draw the circle. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle. circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle
And we extinguish the chalice with these words from our former member, Peter Koppelman, who sometimes still lurks on our stream from the East Coast. This is his poem, Baby Gordy. My family is scattered to the wind, me in California, separated from my wife in Michigan, my daughter in Minnesota at vet school, my son in Virginia, counseling college students. We love each other, but we're blown apart to every corner of the country. Is this our fate? Is this the end of the story? Is this all she wrote? Then my son has Gordy, my first grandson. My wife has moved to Virginia to be their childcare person. My daughter has moved to Virginia to join a veterinary practice there. I have moved to Virginia to reunite with the rest of my family. Baby Gordy is a powerful little boy. He's only a few weeks old, but he has already changed the world. And let us take our commitments to one another and our willingness to change the world for one another out into the world, and let us go in peace.